interesting.
Alrighty, welcome beautiful people to another episode of the Getting Mental podcast. This episode's a very different one. Typically at the start of the show, I'll introduce the guest and the show, but on this one we dive straight in. Scott Robinson, aka The Brain Guy, is one of the most fascinating and interesting people I've spoken to thus far, and personally had the most impact on me. I left this episode feeling completely renewed, not just about the podcast, but about my life and about the things that I need to do to make a shift. And it was super powerful. Scott has a very interesting way of proposing how to create the life that you want. And, typically I'd be very skeptical of some of the stuff that he teaches, but I would say that I've turned a new leaf, and I think that there's a lot of interesting ways in how to approach life that Scott touches on in this episode. What are those things? Well, have a listen to find out. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a follow. Please share it to your friends and your family, your dog, aliens that you might know, anyone, really. I hope you enjoy, and yeah, I'll see you guys around. The one issue, if I was going to point it out, would be that people would use that advice as confirmation bias. It's like, well, I feel this, so that means I'm right. So is there a distinction on that level? Because I can see myself like, well, I feel this way, so then that's just how it is. That's the truth, and because I feel that way, that's the end of the story. How is that different from what you're saying?
Yep, 100%. I can definitely understand that. Thing to remember, and again, this is that lower level of mind. Lower level of mind will literally start shouting that at you straight away. And again, something you'll hear people all the time. You hear people say, oh, that's your truth. This is my truth. I need to speak my truth. You speak your truth. Like, that's the first law of chaos. Well, again, and it's the first law of chaos. The first law of chaos is that everybody has an individual truth. Well, just think about that. Think about a universe where there's an infinite number of truths. That's just an unfathomable chaos, and that's just not true. You live in a perfect universe. There's one truth. And you align with that truth in your own way, in your own unique way, and that will fit your life perfectly. And so there is one truth, which means that basically everyone will come to the same conclusion. So really what you're talking about is you say everybody has that truth available. Everybody can find it, and everybody can literally up-level their life really infinitely. But what you'll arrive at the same inescapable conclusion. And feedbacks to that, you can use a bunch of feedbacks to make sure that to know that you're on the right track. So number one, if you notice that the output of your life, as in, your behaviors, your emotions, your emotional reactions, like literally abundance, the amount of love, the amount of connection and whatnot that you have in your life, if that's not improving if any of those things are not improving, or if all of those things not improving when you've connected to what you think is the truth, then you're probably not aligned with the truth. Like, you're probably aligned with something else and you've called it the truth. And so you can look at those things. If you still feel conflict, if you feel conflict in your life, well, you're probably not aligned with the truth. If you feel guilt or shame or attack, like literally if you feel the need to defend yourself by kind of attacking others, and this is an attack can literally just be some even what we might deem to be gentle, accusatory words. That's a level of attack. If you feel you have a need for that, or you notice that in your life, well, then you're not really aligning with the truth. So, that truth, and this is the thing we say in present moment awareness, everybody's talking about getting present. Like everyone's like, live in the moment, smell the roses, live in the now. Sounds great. Sounds wonderful. Really cliche. Everybody talks about it. I think very, very few people actually really understand it. And, it's that whole thing I'm always saying, it's that whole thing about, you hear the cliche of people say time is an illusion, or the illusion of time. Sounds really fantastic. Sounds like you must be an enlightened consciousness if you say time is an illusion, because you must be seeing through the illusion. But then you ask people on it, they don't really know how to explain it or what it is. And so really, if we want to take it from just the physical body perspective and what we understand, we know, we say we know, and we can witness, we can evidence that the brain and the nervous system are literally in their greatest states of communication when they're in present moment awareness. And this is what we talk about with neuroplasticity, because the brain's paying attention. The only brain that changes itself is the brain that's paying attention. It's only paying attention when it's trying to figure things out. It's actually trying to work things out. It's not just running the autopilot, not just accepting that which it's always accepted to be true. So if you're in every single situation and literally figuring out that situation, which would be to say, I'm here right now with you chatting. What's the truth of this situation? What's going on? And I'm paying attention to everything in my surroundings. Like, am I safe? Is it hot? Is it cold? Like, what's going on here? I'm not just accepting, oh yeah, I'm in a bedroom. I've been here lots of times before. Brain doesn't need to pay attention to that. It's just got a bunch of presumptions. It's going to run. I think you've got a voice that sounds kind of friendly to me. So, right, okay, yeah, you're probably a really friendly, lovely guy. I'm just assuming that rather than actually listening to your words and sort of feeling into what you're saying and actually really understanding who you truly are. So it's actually when you're paying attention, you're trying to figure things out. That's when the brain and nervous system in their greater states of communication. So the whole idea with, and this is the thing, if you're trying to find the truth, the only place you can really find it is now. The only place you can really find it is in the present moment. And this is that whole illusion of time. So think of this. We've talked about this already. Truth is total, right? There's no partial truths. So that's only that which is actually 100% absolutely true. So the only place you can find that is right now, because the past is not a record of anything real. And that sounds like a really challenging thing to say, but it's not a record of anything real. It's a record of perception. So the past, as you see it and as you remember it, is a record of what you have perceived, all those moments in your life that you've perceived. So right now, you and I are sitting here in this conversation, having a chat, and we're each perceiving this moment uniquely individually. So you're perceiving it your way, I'm perceiving it uniquely my way. There'll be some things we agree on. Maybe that's 80% of it, 90% of it, 95. There'll be the things that we agree about the experience and how that went, but that's not 100%. That's not the absolute truth of whatever it is that has actually transpired. So we each record that to memory in our own unique ways. And then we filter that via our biases and our preferences and our value systems. And when we look back on it, one of us may look back on this as a bad chat, and one of us may look back on it as a good chat. And when we each go there, because our perception can only operate in the space we give it to operate, if you've defined it as a bad chat, when you go there and look at it, because your perception is formed from your beliefs, you've already labeled the experience as bad. You've already defined the space you've given your perception to operate as bad. It's only going to find more bad things because you've already told it that's all that's available to perceive in that moment. So you'll just find the things that I said that you disagreed with. And if I define this as a really good chat, like love the sound of your voice, geez, this guy's got a good attitude, and didn't he ask some nice questions? When I go back and look at it, because I've defined it as a good experience, I'm only going to remember more of those things. And that's what people experience, that when we look back at our memories, the happy memories that we look at with rose-colored, rose-tinted glasses, they kind of get more rose-tinted over time because you continue to filter those things via your preferences, biases, and values. And the opposite's true for the bad stuff. So the past is not real. And same thing, we look at history, it's recorded by the victors. Again, the person who's writing down history has literally just written it down from their perception, how they've understood things to have transpired. It's not a record of anything. Yeah, it's not a record of anything that's 100% true. And again, that lower level of mind will say, well, no, I remember some stuff. There's some truth there. Yeah, great. There's some truth, but that's not the truth. So we don't want to. We don't want to align with that. We want to let that go. We can say if it's not truth, it's an illusion. And then,
so just quickly jump in there. My concern with that, Scott, is I love the idea of perceiving reality in the way you want to. But what is concerning for me is when someone, and maybe this is just an underlying belief of something that's separate to what I'm saying, but when someone will change how they're viewing reality, and it makes them a pushover in a way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's my beliefs playing right now, but I'm just saying, like, if someone is walking over someone, they're like just walking all over them, they treat them like shit, and they're like, oh no, this is all good, this is okay, almost like aloofly. It feels, I don't know if that's a word, but we'll make it one. It almost feels like, it is now. Yeah, it almost feels like people, that's a kind of a door for people to alter reality in a way that makes them actually someone that is walkable over, and mistreated. Am I seeing that accurately, or is that just a perception on my side, you think?
So think of this, that lower level of mind, the ego only sees fear, always only going to see fear because it's an illusion. right? So that lower level of mind is literally, it's an invention. It's something you've invented, right? It's an idea of self, of who you think you are, based on the perceptions that you perceive from others about the self. And what I mean by that is, who I am is who I think you think I am, right? And so everybody goes through life literally going, right, your ego's going, now, what are you thinking about me? And what are you thinking about me? What are you thinking about me? And it literally takes on all that information and builds an idea of self. It hasn't gone and asked anybody. It's not actually saying like, right, what do you really think about me? It's just, oh, hang on, you just raised an eyebrow at me. You're not believing a word I was saying, are you? You're not agreeing with this at all. I must be untrustworthy, or I must be giving off, a false vibe. And then I take that on about myself. You haven't said anything. You might have just had an itchy eyebrow, but I've interpreted that my own way. That's what the ego does, right? And it's always based in fear. So it's always going to go towards fear and try and make that experience of reality real, because it knows that it's an illusion, and it knows that it just wants continuity. The only way it stays alive is through your support for it. So if it can get you to feel fear, that makes the ego real. So this is really, really important, because all of those things that you see when we're talking about illusions, right? And you're saying, okay, but wait a minute, but if I let go of those illusions, now maybe I've lost myself, maybe I'm a pushover. Really, illusions are where fears exist. Right. And again, this is, if you've never heard this before, it feels like a real stretch. But once you start to actually go into it, it's just so true, so easy. And it's just such an easy way to live. And it's just,
Can I just correct myself quickly? Sorry to jump in there, Scott. I've just realized what exactly you're saying. I want to repeat it back to you, and you tell me if I'm right here. Yeah. It's like, say, for example, someone is in a situation where, they're being a pushover. That comes from another belief that they're not good enough, maybe. And that's an illusion they might have that's stacked on. I'm just going to be lackadaisical about this and just be like, oh, positive all the time kind of thing. And then that belief underneath that, when they're, walked over, is a belief that I'm not good enough. So maybe what I'm actually addressing is not so much one particular way of being that's against what you're saying, but rather two beliefs stacked on each other.
Yeah, potentially. So you can be, and again, that I'm positive all the time,
because that's my concern, right? That the attitude that comes from, and I'm not saying that you're on that side or you're not, I'm just purely talking about it, that people like overly positive and overzealous about everything in life. It just feels ingenuine sometimes, and people kind of play that role, and like Tony Robbins-esque, Joe Dispenza stuff. You see them doing this really cool stuff. It's like, oh, this is awesome. But then you see them another time when they're doing something completely different, which is misaligned to those values. And it feels like a front almost sometimes.
Yeah, completely. And look, and I get what you're saying. And I think, so that positive vibe that you're saying, like, I think, that can be really, really false. That can just be a mask, and I think I think in my past, I've been there, like trying to be positive all the time, and it was exhausting.
I have as well. And this is what I'm referring to.
Yeah, it's really tiring, and that's not what we're talking about. There's, that getting into present moment awareness, you don't need to pump yourself up to be positive. You can just be with the truth of what is, and this is the thing. So when you let go of that ego's always based in fear. Like we said, the only reason it tries to get you to feel fear is to try and make its experience, make its reality real to you. So make the illusion of its reality real to you, make that illusion real to you by getting you to feel fear or anxiety or worry or guilt or shame or frustration or any of those lower level emotions. Makes those real. That means that you've now bought into that illusion, and its continuity, the ego's continuity, is now assured, right? So the truth is, when you go to present moment awareness, what you're going to feel from the ego will be resistance and hesitation, because the ego will kind of tell you, no, that can't be right. How could you exist without this information from the past? There'll just be chaos. You need this information. How could you possibly understand life and do life without this information? But the truth, when you get to present moment awareness, is all you find is love. That's literally the only thing that's there, And so that love, that truth of who you are, like who you are at your core, is that love. And that truth is eternal, and it's joyous. Like, it's happy. There's nothing you need to do. It's effortless. There's no energy you need to devote to that to make that express. And so I would say in the past, I've done that wrong, where I've just trying to be super, super positive. And my, experience was like, it was just exhausting, at times. There's a lot of times it was just fantastic, but eventually you'd find I was running unsustainably and I ran out of energy. I haven't, in the last several years, I haven't found that, it's just kind of been really effortless to just, because you're seeing truth, you're not having to try and manufacture a positive or manufacture happiness in situations where you're not actually perceiving it. That takes a lot of energy to do. And so, like I was saying, if you are looking for that truth within yourself, looking for that truth about the world and the world you experience, and it's always there, it's always perceivable. It may take a little bit of learning and a bit of practice to try and find it consistently, but the feedbacks, and that you will find that effortlessness, and you will find that joy, and you'll find, like you'll see that things in your life actually improve. And so, just to answer those words that you said before about people, maybe looking like something like a pushover, or that there's something to be frightened or worried about there. Really, what you see, and this is the truth of things when we're in our highest state, is there's nothing to fear, because the ego creates fear. And so think of this: only real things can create real effects, right? It kind of makes sense. The ego being an illusion, there's nothing real that can be produced from an illusion. An illusion can only produce more illusion, can't produce anything real. So we go into this, and this is, so talk about that truth of who you are. The truth of who you are is a limitless, infinite, eternal, beautiful, perfect spiritual being who's just currently having a human experience, same as me, same as everybody else on the planet. So if that spiritual being, like we just said, if that spiritual being, who is the truth of who you are, is eternal, and you don't die, and you're perfect, and it's changelessly perfect, which means nothing can affect it. You can't change that perfection. There's nothing anybody else can do to change that perfection. And that is the truth of who you are. Then where would fear exist in that model? And if that perfection is always joyous, always happy, where would fear eventuate? Where would fear fit? And that's a tough thing for people to answer sometimes, because people have made fear so real and such an integral part of their life. You'll see people looking for it, going, well, no, it has to fit somewhere. Like, where does it fit? Now, the only thing keeping you from experiencing that is your belief system, because your belief, that is the truth of who you are. But if you don't have a belief system that supports that, well, you're never going to experience it. So I'm never going to argue with anybody who says that they don't experience it, or says that it's not real, because if you choose to make that not real for yourself, then 100% you will. And so you can make that illusion your truth. But I'll just say that really, like, if you're looking to connect to the truth, then you just look at those outputs. And if you start to find more joy, more contentment in your life, and you start to find more fulfillment and more connection and more love, well, you're starting to align with the truth. You're starting to find it, and you'll find it more consistently. And every single one of us has that available to us. I absolutely love the quote, that the truth has never been in the hands of the masses. So the truth has always been in the hearts of the masters, and inside every single one of us is a master. The only thing is that we've subordinated our ability and our authority to others, and we've given our power away to what we're looking to information. We're looking to the things that we're discovering to try and find our truth. And so we've basically told ourselves that we don't have that available. So we're Googling it, and we're waiting for the next study to come out to try and tell us what it is. So we're not looking for it. But when you go within, like, it's available to each of us to be able to connect with that, and you'll get the feedback. You'll get the feedback and see that things in your life change. Does that kind of make sense?
It makes perfect sense. The only trepidation I have with it is, to say that the truth is guided by signals, and those signals are more abundance, more love, more compassion, more these kind of things, would then discount the fact that we have other emotions like anger, aggression, like humans have both sides to them. And so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that illusions of reality, so the things that we think we are, which the I'm this or I'm that, whatever, the illusions will show up in everything that's opposite to love and abundance and those kind of things. Is that the accurate kind of way you're saying it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So think of, sorry, do you get more to say?
Yeah, quick question on that. So then if that's the case, and then, that if you aren't aligned, if you aren't having those things, and you're experiencing anger and suffering, all these kind of things, which most would argue are, half of the human experience and very necessary.
Probably more than half the human experience, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah.
Sure. Then why do we have those emotions then, if the truth, which is brought out of abundance, those kind of things, why do those emotions show up?
So for the exact same reasons that we said, but I would just answer that with a question. So I would say, why, whereabouts? Because again, you always want to call out limiting beliefs and falseness when they come up. You
And feel
said
free to
like
call out mine if you want to as well. I'm
yeah, no,
happy
well, just
to.
so, but just look at it. So you say like, okay, hang on, I've got some trepidation around that. Like, there's anger and there's fear and there's this and there's some of these other emotions. Um, where do they fit? And so then I would just ask the question like, do we need to have? Is there a reason why they have to be there? Is there a reason why we have to? Is there something hard and fast that tells us that they have to be
Well, I would
part of the
answer
human
that.
experience?
I'll answer that with, and maybe maybe it's a different chain of thought, but evolutionism, and the idea that we evolved into who we are because it was right for the environment and right for our upbringing and right for who we are today. Now, that's science, right? And that's kind of pushing into the realm of science. Science is the only measure of tool that everyone agrees on to an extent.
Yep. Yeah,
It's
100%.
the
Yep.
right way to measure something. So
Yep.
if we're looking at Darwinism, it tells us that evolutionarily speaking, we've gone through this process of having these emotions because they're necessary. Of course, we're living in different civilization now, and you can argue that point, but basically, evolution says that what we have right now was so important over millions of years that we kept it. So that's what I would say back to that. Like we have those emotions. Do we need to have them? Maybe not, but we do have them because they are necessary to some degree. So I feel like having love and abundance and those kind of things is a beautiful way of creating a utopia and an idea of reality, but to me it doesn't seem realistic because it's not taking into consideration all the different elements of who we are as humans.
Yep. I think so. You look at again right now, like you think we're living in the world that ego created. Like you think when if we're experiencing fear and we're experiencing anger and frustration, those emotions, and they are part of like the human experience for nearly everybody,
And just define
then
the ego for people as well, for those listening,
yeah, so that
what you mean by ego.
yeah, the ego is that lower level of mind, which is it's literally it's an invention. It's an invention of the self. So I'm going
Okay.
to see if I can explain it just really, really quickly. Think when you're really young, literally what happens is you're downloading the beliefs of others about the self. And so if you're born into a loving family, and that's not everybody, but if you're born into a loving family and literally you're cradled and your kids say, your parents say, oh, Luke, you're a beautiful little boy. Don't you give wonderful cuddles? Oh, you're just loving and wonderful. And well, as a little kid, as soon as you're able to kind of think and process, you can think, like, you know what, I'm a really good cuddler because she said it, and then he said it, and they said, like, I must give great cuddles. Like, there's nothing else for you to believe because you've just been only given that love and that nurturance. At some point, your parents start to get disappointed with you for little things. You knock a glass of water or milk over, or and if your parents begin to express disappointment, well, then you're going to start to take that on as a belief. And then remember, again, when we look at evolution, we say that the brain has a negativity bias. Brain's got a negativity bias because it's going to
It
pay
does.
attention more to things that, literally negative stimuli more than positive stimuli, because we believe that our ancestors who had that negativity bias survived on more occasions than the one that had a positivity bias. And what we mean by that is if you're walking through the bushes, you hear a rustle in the bushes. If you think the worst and you think that could be a tiger, and every single time you just jump, have a fight or flight response and
You
run,
survive.
yeah, you survive more times than the person who just goes, oh, that's beautiful. Maybe there's something loving and, beautiful. I'm going to go investigate that beautiful sound. And that one time out of 100 that it's a predator, you become lunch. So that's where we believe the negativity bias has probably evolved from. So when you go to school, say, and you encounter that first teacher who, is not so nice to you, and, you start coming home thinking, well, actually, maybe I'm not that bright. Maybe I'm not as smart as mum and dad said I was. Or maybe I can't concentrate. You start to shift your beliefs about the self. Like that's literally the ego taking that on board and building that idea of the self. Like now I'm someone who's maybe not that smart. Maybe my friends start to give me some feedback about who I am. And so I'm building this idea the whole time. Now, all of that is who you think you are. All of that is what shapes your beliefs, because your beliefs are shaped, or your emotions, your behaviors, and all of that stuff is shaped from your beliefs. And so those beliefs are really, really powerful, but none of that is the truth of who you are. And so that the truth of who you are is that limitless, perfect, eternal soul who's in a human body having a human experience. And my point is that really the amount of the joy and the amount of the abundance, the amount of the basically good times and love that we experience is directly related, directly proportional to the amount that we can align with that higher truth. If we align with that higher truth, well, then we'll experience those things. And you've always got reason. You've always got higher reason. So it's like, I don't need to feel fear to know that there could be a predator or something that could be a physical danger to me. I don't have to feel fear to know that. I can just have higher reason. I can like hear a rustle in the bushes, and then reason can tell me, actually, you know what? Like, that's probably not worth investigating. I could just keep moving. So I'll get that all the time from people when you say that we don't actually need to feel fear. And people will come back with the limiting belief of, no, but fear is good. Fear serves us. Fear just debilitates us. Fear destroys the nervous system. Fear just literally just downregulates and just destroys our biology. Like, and this is people who live in fear, in deep states of fear for long periods of time, end up with disease. So, and we're really aware of this, but you can just have higher reason to do that for you. You don't actually need to have the fear to do that. So, but I would say that, yeah, we've figured out how to do life that way. We've figured out how to do life with those lower level emotions. We've figured out how to do it with fear and maintaining anger and all of that sort of stuff. But do we actually need it? That's another question. Do we actually need it to survive and to get by? That's another question. If we've got higher reason and you've got knowing available, then, which is what we're talking about, knowing the truth. If you actually have knowing, and think of this, in quantum physics, we talk about that the intelligence of the universe, a field of intelligence that is organizing all matter. So many quantum physicists will talk about it as a loving intelligence, or just the higher intelligence of the universe, or just the field it's sort of known as, or the quantum field. It's a field that's organizing all matter. Now that field is information. So, and you have this higher level of mind that's connected to that. Now, whether you have a conscious awareness of that or not, whether you've experienced that in your life before consciously or not, doesn't matter. It's something that every human has, and nearly every human denies, because that belief system doesn't line up. So you don't necessarily experience it. Now, you can connect with that in your own unique way. So everybody will have perception, and you'll have these different frequencies of perception that will be more open in you. So you might be a visual perceiver, or you might be an auditory perceiver, or a kinesthetic perceiver, or an olfactory, or a smell, or a gustatory, a taste perceiver. You perceive things via your own specific combination, and you can connect with that information in your own unique way. And however it is that you do that will be however it is that you do that. But you can download that information. So you think conscious mind, which now in our society, we've kind of championed the conscious mind, because we say we need information. We need information to solve all of our problems. And we're consciously trying to not manipulate the information. We're constantly trying to understand the information so we can work with it and then produce things. Now, that conscious level of mind is literally about 5% of the processing that's going on in the brain. Your unconscious mind is the other 95%. Like, it's way more powerful. So that's the part of the mind that maintains all of the programs for your behaviors and your biases, preferences, emotional reactions, and all of your emotions and feelings. Now, that subconscious can literally just receive downloads from your superconscious mind, from that limitless field of information. You can download information from the superconscious into the subconscious. From there, it can just sit and marinate until such time as your conscious mind can actually catch up and understand it. If I have the belief system that allows for that to happen, then that's what you can experience. And so I would say that's what I kind of experience. That's what I kind of do with people on a one-to-one basis, and you'll see their lives change in big ways. But again, you have to have the belief system that's going to support that, so that you can actually facilitate that process. If you want, like, I'm never going to argue with people who say that, no, that can't be a thing, because you can absolutely make that real for yourself. You won't experience it if you want to block it. So as I said, that information is always available. It may be a process to sort of break down belief systems and understand it, or start to receive it, because our society kind of largely doesn't necessarily believe it's a thing. But when you do, then you can have that knowing, you can have that connection with information, and then perhaps you don't need fear. You can just have knowledge. You can just have knowledge of things and know what needs to be done, know what needs to happen in any given moment.
Yeah, I'm willing to admit that I am sometimes overly skeptical, and that there is definitely room for exploring that possibility. And just to run it home, and to give an example of it to myself and those listening, I'd like to put myself in the hot seat, for example, and give you a scenario in my life, and you can tell me, how
Sure.
I might be seeing things in a certain way that's leading to this, because, yeah, anyways. So,
No, perfect.
with doing this podcast, right, I can speak to my mates and speak to friends, and whatever, and I'm fine. I'm completely good. Just shoot the shit, have fun, get some cool information, and wrap it up. This is my 10th recorded episode with you. And, you know, my kind of default, I guess, and these are just stories in a way, but my default is to go towards more planning, more organizing, kind of making everything structured. And just the other day what's today, Friday? On Wednesday, I had someone on and the call went completely, you know, sideways. It was the internet started stuffing up, and then, you know, before the call I was really nervous, and the night before I was nervous, and, you know, going to bed I was nervous. I slept fine, but, you know, before the podcast, I went through a process. I meditated. I sat with the feeling. I you know, like I asked myself questions like, what would it be like if you were just calm, or like, you know, these kind of questions. And I would jump around and like try and move the emotion around my body and all these kind of things, right? Get in the podcast, and what I usually do, which I didn't do with you today because I'm trying something new and fresh, what I would usually do is write out someone's bio and then read it out. Sometimes they give it to me, but I usually write it myself, and I'll read it out on the show live and like, hey, this is XYZ. And with my friends I've done this with, which has been 2 or 3 at this point, I think, off the top of my head, I've been completely fine. It's like, yada, whatever. But then when it comes to someone I don't know, I will start like stumbling over my words, freaking out, like getting nervous, not breathing properly. I can feel in my body that nervousness, that tension. And, you know, so I've changed my approach now. It's a different story. But, you know, I try all these different things, and that nervousness was still there. I tried to shake it out. I tried to meditate. I tried to sit with the feeling. I tried to ask myself directive questions. From your experience in doing the work that you do, what am I missing? You know, and for those listening as well, if they're about to do public speaking, for example, or they're about to do a podcast themselves, or they're having the same issues, what are they missing? And what do you see from your clients?
Yeah, cool. So I think what you're talking about is rapport, and I'm going to explain rapport, but let's just try and tie the last point together with this one, because I think they kind of come together pretty nicely. So rapport, holding rapport with someone, and people get described as being really good at just holding rapport, really hold great rapport with the crowd or with other people. Holding rapport is just being able to join someone else in their reality. If you can join someone else in their reality, you're in rapport. And that feels really comfortable, and it's beautiful. You do that really well, then people just feel comfortable with you and they speak well. And that's what you're feeling when you're describing, you know, with you, just having chats with your friends. Now, what you were describing, what we were talking about before with that, you know, superconscious mind, you know, higher intelligence of the universe and that truth and that knowledge and all that stuff. And then saying, but what if I haven't experienced that? Like, you know, the conscious mind gets in the way, essentially. What we're talking about, getting a hold of that information and making it work for you. Think of this. It's like information on that superconscious level. Our words can't really hold a context to. We can't really put words to it. So we're trying to understand things from words. And when that information comes through, understanding is not always available. So really what can happen is you've got that information available, and you may have a desire for a particular output. In this case, I just want to have a really smooth podcast. I want to have a really smooth interview and have everything go really, really well. Now, you have a plan for that. And if a couple of things go wrong, you know, internet goes wrong, or I start to feel a bit nervous in myself, then it's like, right, how do I make that happen? How do I put it together? Now, immediately what's going to happen is your conscious mind is going to go straight to memory and experience. It's going to scan your memory and your experience. It's going to scan the history of your life and looking for the different scenarios where it thinks it can build a plan, where it can put a plan together. And again, so much of our world is all built around these conscious mind systems. And so we think we need to be in control of things all the time. So I'm looking, going, how can I figure this out? How do I make it happen? What do I need to do? And you'll probably scan the interviews that went well. You know, what did I do in interviews 1, 5, and 7 that went really, really well? Yeah. And so you look to try and put a plan together. And that may work for you, but if it's a different set of circumstances, there's a pretty good chance, there's a good chance that it might not, you know, it might not actually work for you, or maybe it works okay and you just don't get the very best result you could have gotten. So I guess what I describe to people is say, really, you have a desire, and this is that letting go process, because so much to experience your very best version of self and your very best life, in this case, hold yourself in perfect rapport with someone and have an amazing interview. You have everything that you need. You always have everything that you need. You have that limitless level of mind that's connected to all the information, which means whatever information you need is actually available to you in that moment. You might not be able to get it in terms of words and read it out and understand it, but the information's there. If you have a desire, which you've got a desire to have a perfect interview. Desire is like a seed. all of the mechanics to unfold a desire are inherent within the desire itself. So you've already got the mechanics to unfold the desire. You've already got the information. What you don't have is, you probably, like most people, you just might not have the conscious mind that's ever had the experience of putting those things together, right? And so for that reason, for that to happen, conscious mind is not the place to look. It's kind of, right, I just actually need to sort of step back. I need to sort of maybe step back and just allow this to unfold. Maybe I need to let the other person speak first. And I think like you've probably kind of done that today, in that, like you said, like, you know what, maybe I need to get out of the way a little bit here. And
That's exactly what I've done, Scott. Yeah, I've just like let it go and be like, you know what, like if whatever's meant to happen is meant to happen, right?
Yeah,
and I came on this call, and it's like I'm just gonna let it flow, and we'll just start talking and see what happens. And I you know, inside my heart, and you know, it kind of ties into what you're saying. I felt like that's what I should have done from the start. You know, like I always thought to myself, I just want to have chats. Like I want some questions there, just like so we have questions if, you know, someone doesn't want to talk much. But maybe even that's another thing I need to let go of. But yeah, now we're doing this. I'm just like, whatever happens, happens. You know, people like it, people don't. Doesn't really matter as long as we've enjoyed it. You know.
Yeah, I think you've just connected with the desire. Like you've connected with the desire, which has all the mechanics to unfold itself. And so when when you've connected with the desire, like all those mechanics are there. Now you're in flow, and now you're actually just sort of sitting back. And so that conscious mind, which was trying to make a plan of how this is supposed to go, how's it going to, you're just letting it unfold. You're just letting it unfold. So that if there's information you are receiving from, you know, from that higher level of mind, that's letting you ask the right questions, help you find the right tone. Like I said, I just got on here and just went like, oh, this feels really relaxed. What a beautiful tone of voice. Like this feels really relaxed and caring and lovely. So I'm like, okay, great. Let's just have a chat. This is beautiful, you know? And it's like, but what you've done was that human level of mind, which you've been talking about the whole time, that holds on to fear and anxiety or worry or stress or frustration or any of those emotions that we sort of hold up as being real and so important to our existence, so important for us to understand reality. You just let that go and you're kind of getting a perfect result. It's like you're doing it, you're living it.
You've got me.
It's like, well, you got yourself. So it's beautiful. Like you've unfolded it. If we come back to that rapport, let's just explain that, because that's what you were asking about. So like we said, rapport is being able to join someone else in their reality. So I'd say with you, when you said you had friends on, you already know that reality. You're really comfortable with it. So you get in, you go like, oh, here's my desire. There's my friend. We're in rapport. Let's just do this. That's great. Then I think what it sounds like you did to me is, it sounds like you got other people on who you didn't know, and then you're trying to make it sort of professional. You've got this desire of, I just want to have a chat. Let's just let things unfold. But then there's a projection in the mind of how I think this is supposed to look or how it's supposed to go. So I need to be professional. Let's put a bio in here, and I'm going to have a really smick sounding intro. Before I know that, what I'm doing is that whatever stresses that I have attached to that in my subconscious mind, they're now being brought front and center. I'm starting to have a stress response and my tongue's tying up and I'm not getting the words out. Now I'm feeling nervous potentially that, you know, am I good enough to, you know, be chatting with this person? Are they going to, whatever stresses start to come out. So that now you're just not joining that person in their reality. You're just you're getting a stress response from trying to be in rapport. And so that's a very real thing. I work with that on people like in public speaking and, you know, or just social anxiety, trying to hold rapport. And another really, really cool one is actually getting out of rapport, actually being okay with like the stress response from just losing rapport with people. And what that looks like is, imagine it's like when you say you're going to go out with a bunch of mates and, you know, you've got to get up and work the next day and they're going out for a couple of drinks and you say, look, I'm going to leave by 9 o'clock because I need to get home. But you don't feel comfortable getting up and leaving. You don't feel comfortable saying, guys, I'm out. You know, and so you end up staying there waiting for someone else to leave. So it feels comfortable to leave. Yeah. Well, yeah. So you don't feel comfortable breaking that rapport that you're in with the group. And you end up staying till, you know, 11 o'clock, midnight, having, you know, way more than you wanted to. And that's an experience a lot of people kind of go, you know, like get stuck in. They get really stuck in being able to get out of a conversation, get off a phone call, get out of a group when they're out socially. Being able to break rapport is actually a really powerful thing to be comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, that ties back into what you're saying about the absolute truth. And I'm coming around to the idea of it now, and it's simple, right? It's when you let go of the projection of what you think things should be, you're able to access something much deeper and much more pertinent, which is you can actually become the experience of what you want because you're not trying to be something that you're not. You know, like if I sit here and try to, like, here's the thing, right? I can tell you exactly what it is based on what you've told me there. It's like I saw a website, it's like you need to have this, XYZ for a podcast. You need to do this. And then you look at the most successful podcasts, and they're the people that have done just what they want to do. And there's no formula to doing anything in a particular way other than, there might be some ideas and routines and methods and things you can observe and analyze. But I think that in its essence, if you're pursuing something and you're doing something, you need to make it you, and you can't just... So I understand what you're saying. It's epic.
Yeah, and that's what we were coming back to before when we're saying like that truth of self, when you go into it, that love, that's effortless. Like that's the truth of who you are, and that's effortless to maintain. Trying to be, I'm positive. Yeah, that's exhausting, but just come back to the truth of who you are.
I understand what you mean now. So it's like if you realize, and sorry to cut you off, if you realize through real eyes, as they say, you start seeing the things that you're doing. If it's not effortless, if it's something that takes energy and it's consuming, it's something you don't want to do.
That's feedback.
Yeah, it's feedback. Like the stress or the anxiety of like reading a bio, it's like, is that my body and my consciousness and my mind telling me, or my body telling me, Luke, like this is not what you're meant to be doing in this particular way. You're meant to be doing X, Y, Z. And it's the same with my old job in the past, right? Like doing a job and being like, I need to make money, and just working here and sitting at this desk and feeling like crappy about my life. It's like they're feedbacks, and then your body starts breaking down. All these kind of things happen in order to tell you that you shouldn't be doing this. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And, and I mean, I love what you're saying. Like, I actually think I'd share with you, because I do this all the time. This is kind of trying how I live. It's just like, just go with what feels right. Like go with the truth. And it's like, when you sent me through the email, the original email, and I looked at the questions that you sort of said that, that we wanted to look at. We probably touched on almost none of them today, but, like that was, but they were beautiful. I thought, great questions and everything. But then there was a bunch of other things. And for whatever reason, like I just wrote back and said, I'll send them to you after. It just didn't feel right to send them. It's like, no, it doesn't feel right to do that now. I don't know why, but I'll just go with that. And like, maybe if I'd sent them, you would have put the whole bio thing together and potentially done the, I don't know, but that didn't feel right to do. It didn't feel right to do. And now we've kind of just like, both of us have just gotten into that moment and just go with the truth, and it's unfolded really, really, really nicely.
That's epic. No, you're absolutely right. And that's the whole reason I didn't do it. It's like, well, I'll just improvise, and whatever happens, right? So that's awesome, man. I really like that. Really cool. So I got nothing else to say, man. That's awesome. Yeah. How are we doing for time? Are you gonna? But we're at 11:30, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm good for a little bit. So, like I was saying, you just connected with the desire. You connected with truth in that moment, and you connected with who you are. So all of a sudden, like you said, who you are starts to unfold, and that truth of self, which is always going to be better. Like people come to me all the time because they say, really, they want their best life. They say, right, I want to live my very best life. Okay, great. Can't live your very best life until you're your very best version of self. It would make sense. If you're only 99% or 95% of your very best self, well, then there's some improvement left on the table. That can't possibly be your best life. If you found that extra 5%, that's going to improve that life. So you can only have your very best life when you are your very best version of self. And you can only be your very best version of self when you are your very true self. Like you have to be true to who you are. And I learned this lesson. I used to be a personal trainer, and in personal training, there's a really high turnover rate. It's like the average lifespan of a personal trainer was, in the organization I was working in, was like 15 months. It's like, so a lot of people coming in really enthusiastic about doing this job and being fit and helping people. And, a little over a year later, they're gone. And, it seemed really clear to me really early on that if I was going to try and be motivating people from a false source, if I was going to be trying to motivate people and inspire people from creating an example of someone whom I'm not, like that was absolutely exhausting. That was just draining, and I could see that, like, you know what? And it didn't get good results either. It was like, it's people kind of see through that, but at the heart of it, it was absolutely exhausting. And I was like, I'm not going to last. I love doing this. I would like to make a career out of it. I'd like to do it for longer, but it's, if I keep going this way, like just jumping up and down, bouncing off the walls, trying to be super duper positive, I'm just going to kill myself. So it's like, don't kill this thing that you love. Just find the truth within it. And it was like, okay, just be yourself. And then funnily enough, I got way better results doing that, and so it's exactly that. Like, and again, that's a feedback, that's a feedback to sort of finding finding that truth. So, yeah, like I said, I have people come to me all the time for that, to find their very best self, find their very best life. And to do that, you have to be that very true self. That's kind of what it comes back to. And again, to be the very true self, you can only do that if you're aligned with truth. So again, if you see those outputs, if you see that feedback in your life that things aren't aligning as well and as perfectly as they could, then something's probably misaligned. Something's probably off track somewhere.
Yeah, and people in general, it just seems like the overarching theme all the time is that people are attracted to authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if you're real and you are who you are, which is, like you said, like just being, what's that word you use? You're like aligning with, it's like aligning with your true self, for lack of better words. And I know it sounds so, it's used so much, but it's the truth to it, which is you're not micromanaging something. And when you're micromanaging a part of yourself, which you would probably call the ego, I guess, right? That lower self, when you're micromanaging, I gotta look this way or that way or the other way and yada yada, you start to come off as, awkward or weird or anxious or, all these kind of things. And that comes from if you were to say, hey, like, I'm really nervous right now, and then just like, all right, it is what it is. And that's I think what the key is to, just on the topic of interviews, or even just, what are interviews really? They're just talking to someone about life, right? It's just a chat. That's all it is. It's like, why does it have to be so complicated? It doesn't have to be. Same with socializing. When you start to want an expectation of how you feel the conversation should go, and you project that way of being because you saw XYZ person do it and you feel like it's the right thing to do, you lose yourself and you lose touch with yourself. So yeah, in that sense, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And then, so the feedback for people is just to pay attention. Like we said before, present moment awareness, brain and nervous system in their greatest states of communication when they're present. So they're paying attention to what's going on. So again, look at both of us as to what's happened. Is there was some feeling, there was something that you got that made you sort of feel like, you know what, it feels to be more right to just improvise, just go with this. So pay attention to that feeling. For me, there was a feeling I felt when I saw the questions, just went, actually, you know what, it doesn't feel right to send that through right now. I'm just gonna let it be. It would be really easy to dismiss that again. So you're only going to experience that truth, only going to experience the truth of things in your very best life when you have a belief system that supports that. So if my belief system doesn't support that, and I don't allow myself to see that, I don't allow myself to be present with it, so that I can I can take advantage of neuroplasticity and allow my brain to change, so I perceive and see more of that and experience more of it. It would be really easy for both of us in those moments to just go, oh, that's a really random thing. That's a coincidence. Wasn't that funny? Oh, and just dismiss it, and just completely dismiss it. And then we've missed that opportunity for our brains to pay attention and literally create new synaptic connections around that frequency, around that level of information, around those feelings where we were connecting and tapping into the truth. So if we pay attention and just go, oh, wow, so that was me actually connecting with something higher, something somewhere told me that was what was right. Oh, okay. Just what did I feel in that moment? Even just doing that literally, you're creating new connections in the brain that support you perceiving that more in the future, and so then you can literally just go into that more and more and more, and you'll find that you experience it more and more and more in your life.
Yeah, if you look at the way we're brought up in schools, and I'm referring to the Western culture here, particularly in Australia, because we both know it. You grew up in Australia, right?
Yep.
Yeah. The schools that, and it's mostly the same around Western worlds, it's like everything is boxed in. Everything is like, you go to the box school, you sit in your box car, you go to the screen, the box TV, like everything's boxed in, right? And it feels like I'm still, the way that I do things, it's like there needs to be a process, there needs to be X, Y, Z, there needs to be a certain way of doing things that's the right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it, right? And I feel like, and maybe I can just take the blame myself, but also analyzing school and looking at how we were brought up, everything was like a process, and like this time and that time, and doing all these different things. And I think that there should be more space for fluidity, like Bruce Lee said, like, be like water, right? And I think that not just in the sense of movement and being able to move your body in such a way, although that will translate to the body, I think, which we can expand on as well. But I think if you're like, fluid in your mind and how you approach things, like you might have something prepared, and you might come to a talk or go to meet up with someone, and then it might just change completely. And it's like, well, I'm just going to follow my intuition, my inner tuition, and be guided from something bigger than myself. And if that's a message that I'm receiving, then that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's absolutely perfect. Like we are exactly for what you're saying. We are a systematic animal. Like the brain loves a routine, loves a habit.
Does
And
it
so
really
we
though?
look for
I
that.
mean,
We
I
look
think
to
we've created
reproduce
that.
things. And again, when we go from that lower level of mind where we feel like we need to have control over things, well, the way we try and have control over things, we put processes to things. And like I get that. I get it all week, every week from people. I get people who come to me, write me messages about like I've been in pain for the last decade, or I've been dealing with anxiety or depression or whatever for a long time. And nothing's worked. And do you have a book? Is there a resource that you could give me? Is there something, can you direct me to a podcast that could give me some more information? Because I'll figure this out. And and that people think that's their journey. Like we get so wrapped up thinking that, that it's my journey, it's my job to figure this out because there must be a process. And a number of times I'll hear that, but what's the mechanism behind this? Or what's the process? And I'm looking, so often we don't actually need that. Like, it's like there was no real process for you today. Like you just had a feeling, same as I just had a feeling, and then you went with it, and all of a sudden, like we got a good result. There was desire there as well, and there was, higher intelligence. There's information that we might not have perceived that was part of that. So if we want to say there was a process, the process was just getting still. The process was just actually getting still and just listening to what we actually really truly needed to do. And then information was there. So, this is the thing, like we don't always have to figure things out. That information is not always the savior. Information's great.
Huge.
I said, information's wonderful, but there's a lot of times when that true information might not actually be readily available. And I guess what I see and experience is exactly, I tell this to clients all the time because it's exactly what you've just experienced today. We say right at the start, we say, you know what? That understanding that you're looking for, like your understanding, how do I do this? How do I put this process together? How do I make it perfect? You might say, that's not actually always available. But what we can do is we can just go with the feeling, just go with what's true in the moment, and understanding will come to you down the track. You're going to get to a point where all of a sudden you're living your best life, doing what you truly want, and all of a sudden it's all working out. You find yourself going, oh, that's what it was. Oh, it was me that was in the way. I was blocking me the whole time. Oh, right. Okay, I get it now. Right. That understanding can come down the track pretty much like how it has just in this conversation. It's like, you left space for it, and then all of a sudden, so you got that information from a higher source, went into the subconscious, you got a feeling, it gave you, it said like, what? Intuition's kind of telling me, maybe I'll just roll with it. Let's just wing it. And then down the track, the conscious mind's caught up. Like conscious mind's come into understanding, just going, oh, I think I see what I did. Oh, right. And so there's your process. Like that's literally how the mind works. Like it's also, you've just unfolded that for yourself today.
And this might sound like I'm doing the opposite of that right now whilst doing it, but how can someone cultivate that on a daily basis? Because I can see myself like, oh, this is awesome inspiration, and I'm gonna do this from now on. Just kind of let it flow, let it happen. But then you almost get caught up in the act of trying to let it happen instead of letting it happen, if that makes sense. So is there a way to come back to this kind of feeling? Is there a practice? Is there a tool, a mechanism, a question, a way of being that someone can use to put themselves back into this state of mind?
You can go straight. So again, like we said, it's always found in stillness. And again, like exactly what you're saying, I've experienced this too. This is the way the human mind works. Like we say, we're so big on doing, and we're so big on like having to, like I've got to be at the forefront of this. How do I manipulate it? The thing where they say, like when we talk about that truth, truth being eternal. So it's like, we call that knowledge. So in humanity, we use the word knowledge very differently to say how it's really, I think how the truth of that word, knowledge being eternal. And when you come into knowledge, there's no action required. There's nothing that you actually need to do. And when I first came into that awareness, I can remember, got that information. Okay, when you come into knowledge, there's nothing you need to do. My reaction was like, okay, that's fantastic. So what do I do? And I was like, well, no, you don't need to do anything. Okay, great. So what do I do? And it's like, it's really difficult to get past that doing. That conscious
Right.
mind's desperate to get in the way. So really, like, you've already done it. It's like, oh, I felt a feeling. there was a feeling of tranquility came over me, or there was a feeling of just knowing, or I felt a little nervousness in my stomach, or whatever it was that I felt in that moment.
And that's
You know,
what you're
some
saying about aiming towards abundance and love and those kind of things. Because when you're not having that direct outcome, you're doing the opposite, which is you're not listening to what is right
yeah,
in that moment.
yeah,
You've got me.
you're going with that made up plan in the mind of what I thought was right or what I thought I needed to have everything. You know, that projection. And again, come back to what we were talking before about time being an illusion. And we said the past is not a record of anything that's 100% true. If it's not 100% true, it's not actually true. So by definition, it's an illusion. The future, and so when you're saying like, how am I going to work this out moving forward? The future is just a collection of projections. Another word for a projection is a fantasy. A projection is just something we've made up about how we think things are going to unfold. And we might, again, say, oh, I think there's some truth in that. Some of that's going to unfold. Okay, great. But it's not 100% true. Those projections are all just made up from that information in the past as to how we've understood the world to be, or how we've understood things to be in the past. And we've just worked out that that was illusory. So the only place we can find truth, like real truth, is now. Because again, like in quantum physics, we say that's the only time. The only time is now, right? And so that's where you can actually feel in and get that truth. So if you found it in a feeling, for some people are auditory perceivers, they'll actually hear a voice from within. You know, I don't get that so much, but you know, like I'll get more feelings. Some people will see visions and whatnot, but each of us has those different channels of perception kind of available to us. And it may take some training, may take some practice, but exactly what you experienced, whatever it was, that feeling of knowing, or just, oh, this just feels right. You can anchor into that. And then when you feel it, like you think, okay, I think I feel that again, you know, okay, then I can go with that. And it's like, okay, look at the outputs. Did that work for me? Did it unfold perfectly? Or did it, you know, or was I getting in the way somewhere? Did I misinterpret it? You know, and it may take a few practices. That makes sense. It may take a little bit to sort of start to, you know, hardwire that in, but there's not really a lot more you need to do other than actually find that feeling, access the place, the frequency, the channel via which you're connecting to that truth, to that higher level of mind. And when you start to feel it, well, then just go back there and go back there, because every single time you do, you're creating new synaptic connections in the brain that allow you to perceive it more truly and more clearly and more frequently, like more consistently. And that's the game. That's the game for all of us.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Yeah, just feel and let go of needing to be anything or anyone, and just recognizing that this moment holds the answers. And there is a lot of skepticism and like the word I used before, trepidations around that kind of vibe, because my experience with those kind of people in the past has always been, you know, they say one thing, they do another. So I've taken the whole ideology, I guess, to put it into a word, of that, and made it wrong, because certain people don't hold the values of the things that they say they do. And I see that inherent in the ideology, if that makes sense. And so I've taken that whole thing you're talking about there, all those concepts which I studied so long in my life, you know, reading Joe Dispenza when I was 19, and when he first put out You Are the Placebo. Actually, that was in 2015, so yeah, when I was 20 or something, and or 21, 22, doesn't matter. But I started to really practice that and cultivate that. I got all the meditations and everything, and kind of my thing would be go towards structure and organizing and creating plans and yada yada yada. And then I came across a community here in Sydney who and just across the world, and people I've heard who follow these same beliefs, but they'll say one thing and they'll do another. They don't have integrity with what they say. So I just sort of saw this kind of way of seeing things, which is often associated with spirituality, as something that's negative and wrong, and that it's fluffy, if that makes sense. And so hence why I had a bit of skepticism at the start of the call, and I was just like, you know, this is not right, this doesn't make sense, whatever, you know, I was denying it, the truth of it. And yeah, and just speaking to what you said about, you know, the abundance and moving towards it, that's precisely the lesson that I need to learn in this moment, and for anyone listening, it might be a lesson you need to learn as well. So it's epic.
Look, and I think just it's be open, because remember, everybody, like if everybody's perceiving uniquely, and your perception shapes your reality. So it means that literally everybody's walking around their own reality. Everybody's literally walking around in their own unique reality. There's an infinite number of realities. So, and remember, the brain and that lower level of mind just wants survival. That's all they want. So if somebody challenges your reality, gives you something that, literally makes you go, whoa, hang on, that doesn't fit within my reality, that's potentially a survival level threat, because the brain's trying to predict everything. It's keeping itself safe by a prediction. So when I come on here and start talking about this intelligence universe, let go of systems, let go of processes, just feel like, sometimes the easiest way to feel safe again is just to tear down that other reality, just literally poke holes in it, make fun of it, rip into it, and a lot of people do that. They'll get really aggressive straight away. And unfortunately, like, they'll just kind of miss that truth that's there and available for themselves. So the biggest thing is just understand that you're safe and just perceive into it. Just feel into it. Let it be whatever it needs to be, and then you're not blocking yourself off from the benefits that situation, that person, that whatever it is presenting you with. There'll be something there that you can take away that you'll be able to learn from and benefit from. And if you want to just tear it down initially without looking at it, well, then you very much just stay stuck in your own reality, and and you kind of never grow. So like, it's an awesome thing, really. I'm super grateful that you're just sitting here, just being able to be open and just like literally take on board something new, and then take what you need that actually works for you out of that, and then who knows, you see where your life goes after that.
That's epic. I do have one question though. If it's just about feeling the present moment and doing what feels right in that moment, why should someone come and see you and see a coach?
So yeah, look, because a lot of people just, I think, struggle to get out of their own way. That's the thing. It's like, so look at the outputs. And I think this is where I've been on social media with people all the time saying, look, if you feel your journey is do this all on your own, great. Here's a bit of information. Go do your best. If you take this away, and because you're convinced you're meant to do it on your own, and you come back in 12 months' time and you're still exactly where you are, might be time to reach out. Like, if you're stuck, I generally see people once, twice. If it's a really complex dysfunction, we might see people, a few times. It's rare that I'd see someone more than 5 times. That's a really complex dysfunction. Like, putting truth into the system.
Then.
Yeah, putting truth into the system just changes things enormously. So, and we don't have systems that do that. We don't, like, our society is not set up that way. So it's very much like, if you struggle to get out of your own way, and it's like, you think of the aha moment that you've had here today, like just sort of seeing what you did and how that unfolded. Like, you don't really need much more after that. It's like, oh, okay, I think I get it now. I can see what I need to do. Like, okay, just give people that, and then you're away. You can go and figure it out for yourself. But a lot of people, exactly like Joe Dispenza's book, a lot of people really struggle to get past that habit of being themselves. And if that's something that you're aware of but haven't been able to do, well, then you reach out, because your journey is not to necessarily figure it out. Your journey is all the good stuff that comes out of the unfoldment of you just being your true self, and that's always there. There's nothing that needs to be figured out about your true self. It's always there. Maybe you just need to get who you are not out of the way. And that might be why you need a coach or a bit of help in that moment.
Epic. And just expanding on the outputs part, what that means to me is, there's a quote from Carl Jung. He says, if you want to understand someone's motives, or I guess for this conversation, who they are, see where they are right now and what their outcomes are. And that's what their, in the words you mentioned, their lower mind is. If someone is self-destructive, or they're trying to please people, or whatever it might be, the reason they're at that point in their life is because there's some part of them that wants that, and they're living in that part of themselves. So, the outputs part could be that, right?
And then, well, same thing, those outputs, but then, like, when you're saying looking for feedbacks, that present moment awareness, like we said, the truth is when you feel into present moment awareness, when you're truly, truly, truly present, and you can save yourself hundreds of years of sitting on a mountaintop trying to meditate to find the truth. If you just literally feel into that instant, like, you can literally get there in an instant. It's a moment. So when you get there, if you find, like, the only thing that is there is love. So if you feel into that present moment and you feel something else, that's a feedback. It's like, okay, no, I'm feeling anxiety. I still feel worried about stuff. Okay, well, where's that coming from? Well, I'm really worried about this thing that's the future. Right, that's not present moment, because the present moment is no information from the past, no information from the future, just what am I feeling right now? So if I feel into the present moment and I think I feel worry, I can just try and take a moment to localize. Where's that coming from? Okay, that's coming from the future. Well, I said no future in this space. So, okay, let's let that go. Let's come back and find the present. Maybe I've got to do that twice, 3 times, 10 times. But when I finally find that love, when I finally find that feeling in the present moment, well, now I'm actually ready to start making some decisions about what's right for me. If I'm imposing the past on the present or imposing the future on the present, I've lost the present moment. I don't have that truth available. So that's
it's
feedback.
Scary as well. It's scary, like the idea of just listening to that feedback. I'm thinking about now and like things in my life that I'm doing that potentially isn't really aligning, and like things that I want and I desire, and it's like, I should do that. I just should do it. Just start it, see how you go, kind of thing. But it doesn't feel right for me.
Yeah, but again, always go back to, like we said before, go back to that ego level of mind will always try and give you fear, and it'll always try and tell you, oh no, there'll be chaos there. Like don't let go of the past. Like how could you possibly do the present if you don't have the past? Like it will always try and give you that because it's trying to make itself as real as it possibly can to you, and then it's the ego that's created the past, the ego that's created the future. And in that future are all the projections about how I thought I decided life was supposed to be to make me happy. And really my true happiness is probably never, ever going to look exactly like those projections. You think when you talk about manifestation, like talk about manifesting things, you don't want to be the one from your limited conscious 5% level of mind. You don't want to be the one that's filling in the details on your manifestation, on your dreams. Like you want that infinite level of mind. You want the universe to do that. Like let the infinite level of mind that's connected to all knowledge, let that fill the details in. You just connect to the desire. Do what you did today, which was just, I just want to have a chat. That's how I set this whole thing up. I just want to have conversations and learn stuff, see what comes, see what unfolds. And then what unfolds will always be better than what you set up in your projection. So, and then when you're able to when you see that, then it's like, so if I let go of the projection, that actually leaves space for whatever's supposed to unfold to come in. Right, it was me again. I was blocking it again. Right, I get it. That's kind of that's where we find ourselves.
Well, I think I've learned more from this than anyone else probably has. I hope everyone has learned a lot, but for me, this has been incredible. It's been amazing. Yeah. And if there's anyone that wants to do work with you, where can they find you? Where's the best place?
So I'm the brain guy on Instagram and Facebook. So the.brain.guy or thebrainguy.co on the website. So, but yeah, try to be available, try and be helpful. So if people got questions, I'm happy to kind of give some answers here and there. And there's amazing things that can unfold in the one-to-one space, but it's what feels right. I'm constantly saying, if it feels right, great, let's do it. If it feels like you want to be doing your own thing and trying to work this out for yourself, then okay, stay in that space for a bit. When it feels right, then we'll do something.
That's epic. Well, thanks so much, Scott. This has been awesome. And,
mate, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for being so open.
Anytime. Thank you, beautiful people, for listening to another episode of the Getting Mental podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share it with your friends and family. If you would like to see more of the Getting Mental podcast, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on every social media platform. You can find us at Getting Mental Podcast. Until next time.